Now. So, welcome back, everyone. This is episode 2 of 3, podcast talking about COVID-19 in the Middle East, conflicts in the Middle East, and how those two intermingle. In this one, we are going to be focusing more heavily on the conflicts in the Middle East and what COVID has been doing to them. So, again, I'm joined by my friend Lucas.
Hello.
I'm Brayden. A little bit of backstory for those of you that didn't listen to the first podcast, but are listening to this one. I lived in the Middle East for about a year. I spent my time across 2 different countries, first in Jordan, and then I spent some time in North Africa and Morocco. And while I was in these 2 regions, I also traveled to other countries. I saw different places. I have a lot of experience in that region. I have a lot of friends who are from that region and still live there, so I have a lot of firsthand accounts of what COVID has been doing to this area. And so today, the first thing that I want to talk about is the refugee camps that are all over the Middle East. Very obviously, Jordan has been taking in a lot of Syrian refugees after the crisis and the conflicts that were happening with ISIS and ISIL. And according to Brookers Institution, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating solutions to public issues, the COVID crisis will only prolong conflicts in many nations, including Yemen and Syria, as many of these underfunded refugee camps are hit particularly hard because they obviously don't have that healthcare, right? So I'm curious, what do you think we as Americans who might not completely understand the region or understand the crisis as a whole, what do you think that we can do to help?
I mean, it's always it's always good to learn. Like people just usually sit there and not really care too much about what's happening around the rest of the world. I know I'm I'm not too great about that.
Yeah.
Myself, I usually kind of turn a blind eye to a lot of stuff because I'm not the usual person to worry too much about stuff that isn't immediately applicable to me.
Yeah.
And I know that's just not right. But I feel like people like to worry about things that are more close to home, and since that is very that's the feeling of it being like halfway across the world from them, they aren't too concerned with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the right word, but they're not. And no, it's probably the right word, but it's not too great to say out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree that we as Americans, if we are to continue taking this mantle as the world's police, so to say, which it seems we've been doing since forever, I think it is important that we as American people are well educated on the issues that are happening. In fact, right now is a good place to point out that there are 2 organizations that I would like to shout out that have been a great help in providing me with a ton of information and are great resources for those that want to help with the Middle East, very specifically Palestine, which is one area that, while they have had low reported cases, they still have very serious issues with refugee camps, and they are in great danger to get hit very hard for COVID. So one of those is the Palestinian COVID Relief Fund, and another is the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. Both of them take donations, call-ins, emails. They answer questions. They're an incredible resource, and I just wanted to shout them out early going in so that those of you that are curious and want to continue learning about the Middle East and crises that are happening and what you can do as people to help, they're just incredible in that sense. They're centered in the Middle East, and while they predominantly speak Arabic, they do have people that speak English, which was an incredible help to me as someone who hasn't spoken Arabic in about 2 years. But yeah, I just wanted to shout them out. I think another solution, and another big one, is that obviously past donating is volunteering time to raise awareness, because I understand that a lot of Americans not just don't understand Middle Eastern culture, but it seems that a lot of people are afraid of Middle Eastern culture, or the Middle East in general, you know? When I had moved there for that year, I had plenty of people asking me if I felt safe, if I was okay. They were wondering what I was doing in the Middle East, things like that. And so I want to encourage those that are listening to us to please just, one, have a more open mind to different regions of the world, and two, talk to those of your friends, your family, acquaintances, coworkers, whoever, that might not necessarily have open minds, and try to remind them that, people in the Middle East are still people. They have wants and needs, and they're just as human as the rest of us. Again, building on another topic that we had talked about earlier in the first episode, and something that I'm probably going to be highlighting a lot, is the culturally open borders of the Middle East. A lot of people are able to travel very freely between countries. Many experts are calling COVID, a ticking time bomb was the word that they had used. And they are worried that these issues, that with this incredibly highly infectious virus, will only become greater as time goes on, with more and more people traveling with religious pilgrimages to Mecca, or people traveling from one conflict-ridden area to another, trying to escape poverty, war, things like that. What do you think are some policies that could be implemented between nations to help quell these issues?
I mean, civil unrest. I mean, I could have misunderstood that question, but I mean, civil unrest feels like it's a constant thing that, let's say not just the Middle East has to deal with.
Yeah.
I can't say too much as a pretty privileged first world country, but maybe that's even a little messed up to say as well. But I feel like these things are something that almost can't be prepped for. Like you could obviously do something to help with them, but they're going to people are going to try and do as much as they possibly can.
Yeah.
To continue as usual.
Yeah. And
go for it.
I was just going to say, I think on that note, that people are going to try to continue going on as usual. I think one thing that we as a people, not just in this country, but just kind of around the world, we need to recognize that the old normal will no longer be the new normal. And so one thing that I've seen some countries, especially Jordan, has done, again, an incredible job of handling this. One thing that they have done past lockdowns is encourage people to recognize that it's not just good for them, it's also good for their family. Remember that the Middle East very typically is a family-centered culture. People care about their family and their close relatives, and they want to keep them safe. So I think that educating people, which I understand in the Middle East currently with this crisis and multiple wars and terrorist organizations, it's a little more difficult to educate people, but I think that Jordan has been a shining example of educating its people on why it's important to do these things. So I hope, and I have seen it happen, and so I know that it's possible, that educating the people will be important to help quell that unrest that you were talking about, that issue of feeling homestuck and wanting to just go about as normal. I know everyone here wants to, go back to what they were doing and not have to feel just as locked up as many of us have. Obviously, for people like us who are a bit more shut in, it doesn't really affect us as much as other people, but I can speak from experience with family that a lot of them really just want to go outside and do things like normal again. And it seems like that want is being echoed across the world. And I think that once we educate people on why it's important to resist that want for now, I think that will be very important in making sure that this COVID pandemic is stopped. Or at least brought down to a much more manageable level. Uh, Building on that last question, actually, with unreliable healthcare in many of the region's countries, again, the virus is very dangerous, obviously, here in the U.S. and in a lot of European countries where healthcare is readily available and is top-notch. There are a lot of places in the Middle East where it sadly is not. Do you believe that it should be the responsibility of the surrounding nations and people, and even the international community worldwide, to help those hurting countries?
I might get into a little bit of a tangent, but
Go ahead.
I feel like we're too divided as a world of just people when we could be helping one another for everybody to thrive. It's a battle to the top, and nobody is properly winning.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I also agree with what you had said last episode, that this crisis and a lot of the corruption that has been happening around the world has kind of brought together a unified front on a lot of these issues. You see support for the Hong Kong protesters or the U.S. protesters or people all around the world. In fact, I had seen protests over in the UK and protests in Germany. There have even been protests in the Middle East about the issues happening here, the issues happening around the world. And I think that hopefully, and this is a big hopeful wish, that we as a world recognize that we can't have that secular isolationist idea that we've been falling into within the past couple of decades. I mean, if you look at the U.S. And the way this current presidency has been going, it's very clear that we want to be isolated from the rest of the world, right? I just don't think that that's going to work as time moves forward.
Keep going.
I was just going to say that I think that it should be the responsibility of, especially a country like ours, which totes itself as the world police, the bringers of freedom and happiness and life and liberty, to reach out and help those nations that are in desperate need of our help. That being said, obviously we do need to focus on our own issues that we have here.
We have many issues.
Yeah. But I don't believe that those things have to be mutually exclusive. I don't think that we have to do one without the other. I don't think we have to choose between those two, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like I can say that I believe the same. I feel like, sure, we can deal with we should deal with what we're dealing right now, or what's been done in the past, and make sure that's like atoned for. I guess that could be a word for it. But we're not in it alone in this world. We're
Absolutely.
obviously here to help and be helped. But I feel like this country has a complex of not wanting to ask for help, and when you do, it's like this is my last resort kind of thing. You weren't actually needed, like a macho bravado.
Yeah, it's a perceived weakness to ask for help.
Yeah, and that bleeds down into just normal people as well, not just on a countrywide level.
It's what happens when nationalism goes unchecked, where we believe that we are the best and that we have to, if we have to ask for help, it's only making us seem weak or inferior to these other countries. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that we need to get past that macho bravado, and not just ask for help here, but also reach out and offer help around the world. Because as someone who is incredibly prideful, I do acknowledge that it's hard sometimes as a person to say that I need help. And it's a lot easier if someone else says, hey, let me help you, to agree with it.
I know sorry, but I know I find as a person that even if somebody offers help, it almost like a second or third time I'll actually say yes. Even still, I don't want to seem weak, so I'll wait a few times, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely understand that, and I agree. I'm in a very similar boat in that regards. Um, but I think that there are a lot of cultural issues just around the world. This is very. It's ironic how very similar the U.S. and the Middle East is in this sense. Asking for help is seems to be a struggle and a very machismo, need to prove my strength kind of issue. Uh, you, and I think that once we as a nation, and I think that our generation actually is the best for this, or the best so far for this.
Yeah.
Because it just looking historically at what's been happening, how things are happening right now, and even in the U.S. with the way that our generation has been basically leading, our generation and the generation before us have been leading and been the major participants in protests and organized outcry, basically, against the issues that we're facing. I think it only further proves that we as a country can come together to not just help ourselves, but help those around us. And I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that the U.S. is a melting pot and a home for many immigrants, and a lot of people want to come here, right? That's that's what America was founded on. That's our basic ideals. And so I think that once people realize that once we help everyone around us and ourselves, and we ensure that it's not just us being safe, if we ignore the issues happening in the Middle East, if we don't do anything to aid those who are sick and in need of our help, our wealth, our power, then we're just shooting ourselves in the legs for our future generations when those same people will come over with COVID, with whatever future illness that may be. And I think it can cause another wave of the virus because there's no way to properly screen for it that's effective. And I can look this up right now. I'm curious to see how many people immigrate from the Middle East to the U.S. every year.
It's got to be a pretty high amount, or a substantial amount. Maybe nothing like a few million, but like it's got to be nothing small. A lot of people come to the U.S. for almost like an escape from their country. I guess maybe not almost, as a more or less escape from their country, for like war or just something better. And I feel like the Middle East isn't too much different, especially during the early 2000s when it was a lot more war.
Yeah, I mean, just in 2016, according to the Migration Policy Institute, over 1.2 million immigrants came from the Middle East North Africa region to live in the United States. That's about 3% of the country's 44 million immigrants that are living in the U.S. right now, which doesn't sound like a lot of people, but then you also need to consider that if you put 1.2 million people together anywhere, that would sell out any stadium tenfold. And you know, I think that with a region that, especially as these conflicts, like you said, some of them we have started, some of them are indirectly caused by actions that we or countries like us have caused. I think that a lot of them will start coming to the U.S. or to Europe, and then through Europe to the U.S. And I don't think that our isolationist ideals that we have right now are equipped to handle that.
Mm.
Uh,
We our isolationist ideals of perpetually mess up everything that we could be doing for other countries in like a sense of like brotherhood or maybe brotherhood. but like togetherness
Yeah.
because of our perceived supremacy.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends internationally, especially when I was living in the Middle East. I had a lot of really great conversations with people who had lived in the Middle East in different regions their entire lives, who had said very openly to me that, we as Americans are very arrogant in that sense. We have this idea that we are the best. America number one.
It doesn't help that the government and just society in general promotes it. We're the best, and we're taught it in schools that we've gotten over almost every obstacle in our way, and the only obstacles that have stopped us are because we chose it to. Like this whole ideal of we are the best and nobody can stop us has practically ruined everything we try to go for.
Yeah, it's definitely a dangerous mindset. And I think that a lot of the rest of the world definitely recognizes that, especially the Middle East recognizes that we are definitely not the best. And in fact, there's no point in trying to quantify who's the best, right? And I think that it's a strange mindset. I've talked with multiple veterans. I have friends who go into the military. I come from a military background on my father's side and on my mother's side. I come from a military family. That a lot of them have that perceived America's the best, so we need to do something. And typically that something is war. And a change of mindset in that. Even if we keep that same idea that America is the best. Sure, America is the best. We have an incredible amount of money. We have an incredible amount of power. We have incredible sway in the international economy in the world, right? So then, instead of using that power and that influence to start wars and harm the rest of the world, we can absolutely use that same "we're the best" mindset to push to make the world better. We don't have to be America that went to war with kind of everyone. We can be America, the ones that reached out and provided our resources, our technology, our power to these areas, especially in the Middle East, places that, in fact, if you trace back the history of many of the countries in the Middle East, a lot of the conflicts can be directly tied to World War I and agreements between the U.S., the British, and the French, with like the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and how we intentionally harmed the regions. And so I think that we have a chance, especially right now. Now is an incredible time to be alive, for better or for worse, honestly. Especially with the sense of change, right? The momentum that we have changing the U.S. should not just stop at the U.S. I hope and I believe that change and that momentum and that need for change can move to the surrounding countries and then hopefully to the entire world.
I guess it goes back to the American ideals, or I guess Americans not knowing too much about surrounding countries. I know very little about Canada, so I'm not sure what applies to them and what doesn't. Same thing with Mexico and all Latin American countries.
Mm.
So, for all I know, Costa Rica could be flourishing and doing so much better, or completely in shambles, or El Salvador or something.
Yeah, I have some friends in South America. One of my friends, who I'm not going to mention them by name, just respect for privacy. But they live in Argentina, and they're very adamant that things are not all well in Argentina right now.
Yeah.
And I think that we have the ability to seriously help or harm the entire world, and that's been proven. I mean, from World War I to now, if you look at any major conflict that's been happening, we have serious sway in it. We hold an incredible amount of power. And I think that we can do serious good with that. Hopefully, at least.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a major tangent, but hopefully one that was hopefully it was important for people to realize that this issue, not just COVID, not just government corruption, goes beyond the U.S. and the Middle East and Hong Kong, and it travels around the entire world, and that if we educate ourselves and we are more mindful of our worldly power, that we can do some serious good with that. And that's the major point of this entire podcast, actually, was I want to, as an American who has experiences both being American and living in the Middle East as an American, to explain to those of us who are either a bit apprehensive, a bit worried, not understanding of the issues that are happening internationally, that they don't just affect the people that they're affecting right now. They send ripples and waves to everyone. Like, to put it in perspective, I'll use ISIS and Syria, right? When the Syrian government, which was already struggling, couldn't handle ISIS, who were the first people that they asked to help? Us.
Yeah. Where were the people that kind of put them in the spot where they could be, and where ISIS could practically exist?
Yeah, we did, and that would be its entire other podcast talking about the different terrorist organizations that the U.S. has caused. But yes, to put it lightly, we did. Same with the Taliban, but when the Taliban started causing more harm than anticipated and more than the governments could stop them, we were the first people, boots on the ground, to help. And I think we need to take that motif of being first to the front lines to help away from conflict and into restoration.
It would be a lot more noble if we didn't have anything to do with the Taliban or ISIS.
But I think,
I mean, at least we tried. I guess trying isn't all the way there, but there was an effort. Like there was an effort.
And obviously, the American people, us, we didn't exactly have a say in when the CIA decided to fund and train terrorist organizations. We didn't even know that it was happening until it had happened. But that's a tangent that we can absolutely go on another time. Bringing it back to the focus of this episode, which is conflicts and the Middle East and COVID. I have word from one of my friends who currently lives in the capital of Jordan, Amman, who has shared with me their lockdown experience. Because you and I are, it's safe to say we're pretty shut-in people, no?
Yeah.
My friend is...
I haven't left the house in probably a good 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, the last time I left the house was to get a haircut, and before that was like weeks before. But so, my friend is very much the opposite, very outgoing. They're a great person and very social. So this lockdown, especially in Jordan, where it's been happening since the middle of January, and it's still ongoing, mind you, their experience was very different from ours, and so I wanted to kind of compare and contrast that. So like you had said, our lockdown only really started in March, right? Something like that?
Yeah, like halfway through March.
Yeah, halfway through March. So they were already in lockdown 2-3-ish months before we were. And they... All shops, all religious places of worship, entertainment, most of it was shut down, if not all of it. In fact, things are just barely starting to open up as the lockdown has been going, and as their curve has been flattening. And one thing that is interesting to compare is how there, like here, a lot of people are saying that we are overreacting, right? Because there they only had about 400 cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you think that we should be using Jordan as an example of what we should do, or as an example of something that went a bit too far?
Oh, I mean, if their numbers aren't deflated or inflated, or like again deflated, then of course we should be doing something. Like maybe it's kind of selfish of me to say because I don't really go outside. I don't really experience a lot of outdoorsy
Mm-hmm.
activities most of the time. But you take a look at some of the people now, like right as it started, you got those kids in Florida, like, oh, it's my spring break. I'm going to do what I want to do. If I die, I die, kind of thing. Like it's it's not really you that we're worrying about. It's like other people that what you're probably close to the prime of your life, so your immune system is pretty great. So
Mm-hmm.
people have survived COVID very, well, I guess not very easily, but it's happened on multiple occasions. I don't know how often it is.
I'm sorry, you had cut out.
So uncommon to survive,
Sorry, Lucas,
but
you had
it's
cut out.
who you'd spread it to before you locked yourself down. Like, oh, I'm sick, is the problem.
Sorry, could you repeat? You had cut out right around like the beginning of that.
No?
Oh, I only caught the back half of that because your audio had cut out. Hello?
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Oops.
Yeah, sorry, you had cut out in the middle of that explanation.
Where did I leave off?
I'm not entirely sure, honestly. You had kind of jumped back in, you had started talking, and then you had left in the middle of a sentence, and then...
Okay, so I'll just start over.
Yeah.
I think we should use it as like a baseline of what we should be doing.
Mhm.
They've been quarantining since basically China's like, "Ayo, this is getting a little out of hand,"
Mhm.
and so Jordan's like, "All right, let's not have our people die." While America's like, "That's fine. It's not like nobody." And hundreds of thousands of people immigrate to the U.S. from China, or go on trips from China to the U.S. or anywhere in the surrounding where they could have come from. Nah, we're fine. And then it's already too late by the time we realize this is a problem. And it didn't help that right as it started, I know there was a lot of kids that were going to Florida and other places for their spring break. Like, oh, I'm gonna have fun, and if I die, I die. It's like a lot of people. I guess maybe not a lot, but like it's not impossible to survive. And since they're pretty much what right before or right just as the prime of their life, their immune system's pretty great. They're doing pretty well for themselves. Their bodies not giving out on them yet.
Mhm.
They're at probably the highest likelihood of getting over it. But it's not them that we worry about. It's the people they spread it to. So say they come back from their spring break and they're feeling fine, but they go hang out with their grandparents, or um, they go to like a gathering, like a family gathering,
Mhm.
and there's elderly people there or small children. They could spread it to them, and that could spell death for them, and it wasn't their choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that I don't know. I think that it's going to be interesting moving forward to see how we as a people, we as a country, we as a world handle everything. And I think that I personally think that they are a great example of what to do right. There was a great quote. I can't remember exactly who had said it, but someone had said that uh, we'll never know if we overreacted, but we'll definitely know if we underreacted.
Hmm.
And in the case of the U.S. with over 2 million cases,
He definitely underreacted.
yeah.
Hmm. I know right now my family is doing as much as we can to make sure none of us get sick. We all worry about my elderly grandparents. They're both in their 80s,
Hmm.
and if we spread it to one of them, that's a pretty solid chance they're gone.
Yeah.
Um, I know my mother leaves the house the most, and she's gotten checked for COVID twice by now, and she's been fine.
Hmm.
Um, then probably my father leaves the house next, and then my
Hmm.
older brother, and I've left the house like less than 10 times in the past 3 or 4 months.
Hmm. Yeah, I
And
mean,
one of those,
I've left like maybe 5 times.
yeah, I could probably count it. Like what? I'd say like maybe 6 or 7 times because I had a doctor's appointment that we scheduled like a year ago.
Hmm.
I went to Home Depot. Whatever. That's it's not a whatever. Well, it's not on topic. It's a little bit off topic, but we're doing as best as we can.
Hmm.
I know my the other parts of my family. I know my aunt, my uncle,
Hmm.
one of my father's half of the family are trying what they can.
Hmm.
But you get a lot of people like my father. He wants to go out for like he wants to go on like car rides and go like on a trip with his cousins, his best
Hmm.
friend, like they always do. They'll like take a car ride to like South Carolina and hang out for like a week or two there,
Yeah.
and they gotta worry about like okay they're all good and whoever they interact with they gotta make sure they're good, and it's a whole hassle to make sure that none of them spreads it to their families and that could snowball into something horrible.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's important for us as a people to, again, acknowledge that our old normal can no longer be our new normal, at
Mhm.
least for a very long time. Uh,
Yeah.
for the rest of this year, at a bare minimum.
Yeah, although I'm really hoping I can go back to school in like
Yeah.
September, October because this ain't it.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
worried about I'm worried about my future, honestly, because obviously with this being my final project of my school year and my final project uh, ever for high school. um, I've told you before I'm going to be working for AmeriCorps, hopefully, and
Mhm.
I have no idea what I'm going to be doing with that due to this virus and due to the fact that there are so many people infected. I don't know what that will entail because typically it's you moving around the country and helping out communities, building houses and trails and things like that to low income areas. But with the threat of such an infectable virus, I don't even know if that's something that we can do right now.
Yeah.
But I do think that
Or even so, oh sorry, but I think even so, you that's probably the best thing you could do is
mm,
help people that would probably be like some of the biggest carriers. Like let's look at the homeless population.
hmm hmm
They can't really social distance, so I guess they kind of could, but they're pretty out in the open.
yeah, they're not exactly protected.
Yeah. Obviously, getting masks to them isn't the top priority of people, which is a little
Hmm.
messed up. But everybody kind of looks up for themselves, which
Yeah. Which we've talked about a lot here today.
yeah, it always comes back to this: people being horrible.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I don't think that people are horrible. I think that I think that people get caught up in their own ideas, in their own pride, and I think that if you compare even just like 3 generations, right? Not even going that far. Our generation to our parents' generation, and the way that we handle ourselves and the way that we handle our interactions with each other, it's so very different. And I think that moving forward, we'll be able to get past that. I mean, if you look at the protests in the entire U.S. right now, actually the entire world right now, you see, like I had seen the protests in New Haven. I was there. It was amazing, by the way. You saw people of all races, creeds, backgrounds coming together for protests and to talk and to voice their want for change. And I think that that's going to be a common theme moving forward. Or at least I hope so.
Yeah, we can really only hope. Although, I feel like the COVID situation really shows how much we can stick together as a people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because sorry about that.
No, you go.
Because look at something Floyd. I don't remember his name.
George
Floyd.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I got it right. How this happens to him, and we usually American people, U.S. get like, oh, we're mad about this, but nothing really happens. But this, it's like Emmett Till V2.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
It had to have like the proper scenario. Like it was like trying to light a fire underwater.
Mm.
And we finally found some waterproof kindling.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna use that metaphor later on. That's a really good one.
That is a good one.
I gotta write that down.
But yeah, on that note, and on the idea that we as a people should come together, not just for our country, but for as the world as a whole, I want to thank you again. We've taken up kind of all of my questions, and we definitely went on this episode a lot longer than we did the last one. So this second episode is kind of episode 2 and 3 put together.
Yeah, it's extended version.
Yeah.
It's like the deluxe album.
But again, thank you, and for those of you that are listening, I would really enjoy if you had checked out the organizations such as the Palestinian Relief Fund, the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, and the Palestinian COVID Relief Fund, because those 3 organizations provided me a ton of information on not just conflict in the Middle East and first-hand accounts, but also how COVID has been affecting the Middle East, giving me more exact numbers, because just Googling it obviously isn't as reliable as we would hope it to be. And with that, I thank any and all of you who are listening, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.